Good morning, everyone. My name is Miriam Glaise. I'm the founder of Athlete Soul. You are this morning on our educational webinar that we host every Tuesday. Today, we're going to be talking about interview skills, resume building, cover letter with Butch Reiser. I will let him introduce himself in a minute. For now, I'm going to give you just a little bit of information about the webinar as we usually do. Remember that this event is recorded and it will be available on our website after the end of the event, and we will be sharing it with you by email as well. You can ask questions during the whole presentation, and I invite you to do so in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We're going to be starting with a 30-minute presentation from Butch, and then after that, we'll be taking questions from the audience and answering anything that you may be wondering about for the market, the industry and the market at the moment for hiring. We also have a whole lot of event planned for the month of May, so I invite you to visit our website at athletesoul.space/events if you want to register for any other events. But for now, I'm going to pass it on to Butch to introduce himself, and I hope you enjoyed this webinar today. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. I'm pleased to be here. I guess the first time I heard about you was on the podcast with Career Competitor with Steve Malloy. So heard that, and I said, I got to reach out to you. So just a little bit of background on myself. I've been in HR for almost 30 years now. Worked for UPS, Penske, and I'm currently with Little Caesars. I'm a region HR business partner. And I've been doing interview coaching for probably about 10 years now. I've interviewed probably over 10,000 people in my career. So I would consider myself, I know a couple of things about interviewing, so hopefully I can pass it on. I've done quite a few training sessions, webinars. I do a lot of nonprofit organizations, helping people get back on their feet. In 2008, 2009, unfortunately, I was the Grim Reaper when I was working at Penske and had to lay off over 100 people in a couple of months. So at that time, I was like, I got to do something positive. So that's really when I started helping people ramp it up a little bit more with their interviewing skills and give it back. And I truly believe you got to give to receive. So hopefully I can help a few people today. So since this is kind of an athletic theme and I played football back in the day myself, kind of go through the hiring process a little bit. So the first part would be practice, just like Nick Saban would say, Coach Alabama, it's all about the process. So first part is you got to do your grunt work. You got to do your practice. You got to do your preparation and really put in the time. That's really probably 80-90% of the battle. It's easier when game day comes and then you get the job offer and when you win. But unless you do the work like you know ahead of time, you're not even going to show up on game day. So just a couple of things, and this is like 40,000 feet high level information. It's a lot of information, but hopefully some good takeaways. So always start with the cover letter. I mean, the whole objective is the cover letter is for somebody to look at your resume, and then once they see your resume, they like your resume, hopefully, and then that warrants going in for interview. And hopefully you ace the interview and then you get the job offer. So obviously that's the end result. That's the win. So just going over your cover letter, just a couple points. You need to make it personal. You never want to say to whom it may concern. Do a little bit of research, find out who the hiring manager is or the HR manager, and make it personal. And just one page, few paragraphs, pretty simple. And just like your resume, one key point is make sure you have a professional email address. I've seen some pretty crazy emails, Big Daddy and Barbie Mom, and you can name it. So make sure you have a professional email address, and maybe just keep an email just for your job search, and then have another one for your personal. So the resume, try to figure out what their pain point is and address it. In the cover letter. And then for the resume, I'm a big fan of a one-page executive resume. That's what I have. People don't need 2 and 3 pages. What happens is most of the time they don't even get a chance to look at the second or third page anyway. So you have to get their attention on the first page. And really, it's about 6 seconds if a recruiter is looking at your resume. That all you have is to get their attention. So you want to make it nice and easy for them to read. Again, professional email address, Also, you don't have to put your whole address, personal address on the resume. You can just put nearest town. So example, if you live in the outskirts of Atlanta, but you want to work in Atlanta, I would put Atlanta and then the zip code. So this way, if a recruiter from around the country is looking at your resume, they can kind of know, okay, Atlanta, they wouldn't know a small town like Sugar Hill or somewhere else. And then the next part is once you get that resume, you really got to figure out what you want to do and where you want to be at. So write down, to develop the resume, write down all the skills that you've had, what your responsibilities were. The big thing on a resume a recruiter is going to look for is what did you do and what did you accomplish? So anytime you can save money, improve efficiencies, reduce costs, those are the things that hiring managers and recruiters are looking for. And if you don't have the experience, if you're just coming out of school, put any volunteer work you have, or if you were in charge of your fraternity or sorority, put what skills you did in that job, in those roles. So even if you work for free and you volunteered or church or school, put on your resume. Even if you're in between jobs, say you're in between jobs or you're employed or something, I'm sure, somebody, you've been doing something. So fill in those gaps, even if it was volunteer work. If you were a stay-at-home mom, then put homemaker. Don't let the hiring manager guess that you were just sitting home, playing video games. So fill in the gaps for them, make it easy for them. LinkedIn, recruiters spend 95% of their day on LinkedIn. So if you aren't on LinkedIn, you need to get on LinkedIn, and you need to have a professional picture. And then a couple of tips here at LinkedIn, take a look at other professionals in your field that you want to be in. So if it's sales, marketing, HR, take a look in LinkedIn and look up for those fields and those professions, and you can copy and paste and say, okay, I did this or I did that, or this is what I'm interested in. And then you could just copy what they have and tweak it a little bit. If you're currently in job search mode, right underneath your name, you want to put currently seeking positions as, HR representative, recruiter, sales, marketing. So make it as easy as you can for the recruiters and hiring managers to find you and search you on LinkedIn. Join groups, so alumni associations, got to take advantage of it. So former athletes, take advantage of those networks that you have or that you could develop. Nobody's going to turn you down. At least I don't think so. If you say, hi, my name's Butch Reiser, went to Delaware Valley University, played football, I'd love to connect with you. I'm really interested in a field in HR. Maybe you can give me some tips, or maybe I can follow up with you down the road. Absolutely, especially in this day and age, people are definitely going to be positive and willing to help you out. Even though the economy is real bad and, I know jobs are tough out there, the companies that are hiring in pharmaceutical and medical fields, they are hiring. So timing's everything, right? So, but you just can't sit down and say, I give up, I'm not going to do anything. This is the time when people are home that are more receptive to helping each other. So use LinkedIn, use your network, alumni associations, school, former coaches, get recommendations, church groups. You need to let everybody know that you're looking for a job, whether you're recently out of college or in between jobs, and what you want to do. So make sure you know what you want to do before you start telling other people, oh, I kind of want to do this or I kind of want to do that. What are you interested in? What are you good at? What are your strengths? Because life could get long out there, if and tiresome if you pick a career that you're really not passionate about or enjoy. So make sure it's something you enjoy and you're willing to put the work in. Excuse me. So you do all that work and now you get a call from a recruiter. So typically you're going to get a phone interview first or a Zoom, but still probably more a phone interview first. So be prepared. Just like anything else, you have to do your homework on the company, the organization, the person that you're going to be meeting with or interviewing with. Do some research, see if you have any connections there. Find out what the company does, what's their mission statement, what's their values. So as much information and research as you can do ahead of time, it's only going to make the interview go faster, go better. For a phone interview, it helps to stand up and talk, and you can have your notes in front of you so you can kind of refer to them, which makes it really easy. But your voice usually projects better if you're standing up. So you can have all your questions out, your copy of your resume, the job description, and then your notes and stuff in front of you. So that's the beauty of a phone interview. The other person's not going to know that you have all your little notes and cheat sheets in front of you. For a Zoom interview or a video interview, you can tape or have your notes on the side of the computer. But make sure you do a test ahead of time, make sure the volume is correct and all that is in your background's correct too. Be careful what's in your background because that's what you want to portray behind you. So make sure it's appropriate. And if you have some books or something that you want to show, put that behind you as well. And the number one question on all interviews is tell me about yourself or some version of it. And that's usually the icebreaker question. Everybody knows it's coming, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't prepare for that question. And you might think it's an easy question, but it could go sideways pretty quick, and it really sets a tone for the rest of the interview. So if you do well, you nail that question, you're like, okay, great, bring it on. I'm ready for the next one. So whenever I'm coaching somebody, since typically it's either going to be on the phone or if you're in a face-to-face interview, you're not going to have your notes in front of you. So for a face-to-face interview, bring your hands. So your fingers, your 5 points would guide you for this answer. So your thumb would be your base. So that would be your education and experience. That's your foundation. Your pointer finger is going to be your expertise or whatever their pain point is. So if it's sales, your expertise is growing, developing, networking sales. And then your middle finger and ring finger would be those transferable skills. So based on the job description, you're usually going to see 4 or 5 buzzwords over and over again. So it could be leadership, it could be analytical skills, it could be communication skills. So whatever words you see over and over again, you want to make sure you highlight that in your tell me about yourself answer. So even though they're saying tell me about yourself, what they really want to hear is that you have the skills that they're looking for. And then the last thing would be your pinky. So what additional value can you bring to the position, can you bring to the role? So whether it's another certification, excuse me, if you speak a second language, or again, if you come from if you're a former athlete and your work ethic and your desire and your determination. So whatever's going to set you apart from the competition, that would be your pinky. So typically this answer needs to be around 3 minutes long. And that's kind of the sweet spot. So again, your base is your education and experience, your pointer finger is your expertise, and then your middle finger, ring finger are those transferable skills that hopefully you have, but again, what they're looking for. And then the pinky would be, okay, what's the added value? What can I do better than anybody else, better than my competition? And then that should flow a lot easier once you have those 5 points down. And you're going to have to tweak it based on the job you're applying for in the interview. But that should make it flow a lot easier. And that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the interview. So that's typically the number one question or some form of it. Another big question is, why do you want to work here? Or why do you want to go to school here? So I always tell folks, start with how much you admire the school or the company, their product, their values, their mission statement. So again, based on your homework, what do you admire about that company or organization? Second part would be you want to be part of a winning team. And then the third part would be that, again, going back to the value that you bring, this is why, based on my education experience, this is why I believe I would be an asset to your organization, why I want to be part of your team. So that's a pretty big number 2 question. And then you might have the behavior-based questions. So anytime a question starts with tell me about a time, that's a behavior-based question. So the theory is if you've done it correctly in the past, that's the best predictor of future behaviors. So with a behavior-based question, you want to tell a story. Everybody loves stories. They remember stories. So to tell a story, I used a STAR as an acronym. So what was the situation or task? What was the action steps that you took? And then the big thing, just like the finale of a movie, what was the result? So tell me about a time we had a difficult employee. Well, I had Bob, and Bob wasn't coming to work on time and this and that, blah, blah, blah. The action steps that I took, well, I sat down with Bob, I worked with him, I adjusted the schedule, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And as a result, Bob was able to turn around. He became a model employee. A year later, he was promoted, and Bob is now a coach, and he's mentoring others. So anytime you can give a story that has a happy ending, that's a more impactful answer. And most of those answers need to be around 2 minutes long. So except for the tell me about yourself answer, everything else should be around 2 minutes is kind of sweet spot. 1 minute's kind of too fast, and 4 or 5 minutes, you're kind of rambling, and you're gonna lose your audience. So you're acing the interview, and it's coming time to the end of the interview, and you're wrapping up, and the hiring manager says, okay, what questions do you have for me? Well, the worst possible thing you could say is, well, Mr. Smith, you covered it all, and I really don't have any questions. Now, you got to have questions. So you get about 3 or 4 questions. You want to make sure you're getting the biggest bang for your buck. So don't ask a question that you can research the information on Google. So, how many people work at this company? Well, you can kind of figure that out on your own. And really, is that adding any value? Is that helping you at all? So a couple of my favorite questions is, what would success look like a year from now? What would be my biggest challenge in this role? What are the next steps in the hiring process? That's kind of how you want to end it up. It's always good, I think, also to ask, why is this position open? Is it a new position? Are they just created? Are they growing? Or was somebody let go? So this way you kind of get an idea what you're getting into. And then the last part is, if you really want the job and this is exactly what you want, you got to let them know. You got to show the enthusiasm and excitement and say, hey, yeah, this is exactly what I want. I'd love to be a part of your team. What are the next steps? And then go from there. So that's the game day. And then you got to follow up. It's amazing. Like I said, I've interviewed probably over 10,000 people, and I might have gotten 10 email follow-ups and maybe 5 handwritten thank you cards. So again, what's going to set you apart, even if it's close, or maybe you came in second and the first person turned the job down, is the follow-up. So absolutely that night, get the person's email address, send an email to them. I know everybody's probably working from home now, so but if you do have a eventual face-to-face interview, then you want to do a handwritten thank you card, make it personable, and just thanking them for their time and the opportunity. So that's really going to set you apart. And then the last part, there's a lot of stuff here. The last part is, okay, great, you win, you get the job offer. So now what do you do? So typically the recruiter or hiring manager is going to ask you, what are your salary expectations, or how much money you made, or what are you looking for? What you want to try to do is play tennis with this question as much as you can. So put it back on them. So, if they ask you that question, you want to say, well, can you, maybe tell me what the range would be for this position? So if they tell you the range, well, it's 70 to 100,000, then obviously you want to say, well, I'm currently looking for positions in the $100,000 range, but never give them an exact number. And it's also based on the total compensation package. So the base could be lower, but you really need to look at the whole package. What are the 401k, medical benefits, and stock options, or whatever the package is. But again, try to leave yourself an open. And if they ask for a salary, just give them a wide range, or throw it back on them and ask them, what do you typically pay somebody with my experience or education, or what's the range, or something like that. Try to have them commit to a number first, and then you can go from there. You don't want to throw out a number first unless you have to. If you're dealing with a headhunter, you could probably tell them a little bit better, what you're looking for, as opposed to somebody from the company recruiting. And then once you get it, I'd say in my career, probably 95% of the people do not negotiate. What's the worst they can say? I mean, you can counter, ask for an extra week vacation, maybe $5,000, $10,000 more, throw it back on them. The worst they can say is no. It's funny. I guess I'm a closet bachelorette fan. So my wife's always watching. I'm kind of peeking up watching it at night. But until you get that rose, the company, the hiring team, they control everything. So, but once you get that rose, that offer letter in writing, it's got to be in writing. nothing verbal. But once you get in writing, then you kind of control the interview from there, and then it's your opportunity to counter, or always ask for something. Can't hurt. I mean, they're not going to start all over again just because you ask for a couple grand more. The worst they can say, no, that's the best we have, but maybe you can pick up a couple extra holidays or something else. So it's always worth a shot to negotiate the offer and try to get a little bit more. So that was a lot. Threw a lot in almost a half an hour, I guess. So a lot of information, kind of high level, but hopefully, maybe we have some questions or anything Miriam wanted to ask. Go ahead, please.
Yes. So hang on. Let me go back to seeing you. And first of all, thank you for the presentation. And I know it's a lot of information that you went through, and I'd like to go through some of the different topics that you touched on with a few questions. So first of all, is going back to the cover letter. Do you have any recommendation for all of us on how to make the cover letter stand out? And typically, the second step would be typically what content would you want to see as a hiring person in the cover letter?
Yeah, the big thing is make it personable. Again, address it to the hiring manager or HR manager. Don't make it just to whom it may concern, and make it personable. Hi, Mr. Smith. I see you have an opening for a sales rep. I just graduated from XYU University. I was a 4-year letterman on the volleyball team. My work ethic. I have recommendations from my coach. I'd love an opportunity to speak with you more regarding what I can bring to the position, and I'll be following up with you on June 1st. So I think that's how you need to tie it in, but also put a date that you're going to follow up and follow up. Give a call, send an email to show that you put in writing and you're going to follow up. So.
Do you have any specific recommendation as to organizational skill during that process of recruiting? If I'm applying and I have multiple cover letter, multiple resume, multiple people and companies that I'm reaching out to, any specific advice on how to keep track of all of this?
Sure. So a couple of things when you save, whether it's the cover letter or your resume, because you want to tailor your resume to each specific job. All right. So you might have one base resume and then you want to tweak it based on the job you're applying for. So every time you save it as, Butch Reiser dot, Little Caesars HR or whatever company you're applying for. So this way, a couple of things happen is what resume you have when you go to interview there. And also when they get when they get your email, whatever, they're going to say, wow, this person really took the time to make it personalized for this specific position. Also, another good way to keep yourself on track is come up with an Excel spreadsheet for the companies you're applying for, when you applied, or who you networked with, and when you're going to follow up. So you have that Excel spreadsheet, so it kind of keeps you on track. And this way you're organized. And and any comments, here's a position, blah blah blah, and you can use that to follow up later on too, in case 2-3 years from now you want to follow up with those companies. You have that information right in front of you. And also you can save your passwords. So when you fill out an application online, a lot of times they ask you for a password or whatever, so you can save that information there, so it's all in one spot.
Absolutely. And do you have a recommendation for us on timing between the moment you send out that cover letter and application and the follow-up with the HR person?
I would say 2 weeks is probably a good time frame. You want to be pleasantly persistent. So there's a fine line there, right? From being a pain to showing your persistence. I mean, especially if you're applying for a sales position, they want to hear that you're following up and going after it. So 2 weeks is usually by the time they get the resumes. And for big companies, they have resume screening machines that kind of scan through when they're looking for keywords. So that's why it's so important to look at that job description and make sure you put those keywords and tailor it to the resume you're applying for. Because if it's a big company and that resume goes through, if you don't have those buzzwords, a human person is not even going to look at your resume.
I think that's really important to outline, because I think most people know about it, but perhaps not everybody on the call today, and understanding that your resume might not even make it in front of a real person or in front of the HR department. So how to get to that step is to really have the right word into your resume and your cover letter, and things that are matching with the job description that you had online. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think Google gets 10,000 resumes a day, something crazy like that. So if it doesn't say sales representative or whatever they're specifically looking for, then you're never going to get it looked at. And then a lot of times also with even any company, I mean, typically recruiters, it might be somebody right out of school or something like that. So it's usually an entry level type position for most companies, unless you're executive recruiter. So if you don't get their attention right away and make it easy for them, they're just going to toss it anyway. So take the time. It probably take you a good hour, maybe longer, to apply for each job. So you just can't, it's like fishing, you got to use the right bait. So if you don't have the right resume, and taking that 1 hour or 2 hours to really, put together a cover letter and really apply to that targeted position, I'd rather you apply for 2 or 3 jobs a day than 20 jobs a day. Your luck is going to be much better if you can really tailor your cover letter, resume, and target to those companies that you're really interested in.
Absolutely. And do you have any specific recommendation? I know you talked about perhaps not including your full personal address on your resume. Do you recommend to have a picture or not? And then specifically for former athletes, are there things that should be absolutely included in their resume because it shows certain transferable skills and in resilience and values that athletes have?
So if you're recent college graduate, any awards you might have won in school or on the playing field or on the gym, you would want to put, especially if you were like comeback player of the year or you were a walk-on and you got a scholarship your senior year. I mean, that shows perseverance and the work ethic and so on. If you've been in the work world for a while, again, how much, if you've been working for 5 years, then you probably want to limit, you really want to focus on your career as opposed to your education. So it depends where you are. But if you're a recent college graduate, obviously emphasize anything that like you're a team captain and those type of things, because all that's important and transferable skills that all employers are looking for.
Absolutely. And as we're going to talk a little bit more about the interview process specifically, and one of the questions that relates to that and to athletes in general is the lack of, perhaps the lack of experience as a college student. If you were a student athlete, often you didn't have a chance to have internship experience or any kind of experience during the summertime. Is this a question that you see come back as a recruiter, and how do you advise athletes to answer that question?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, even though I played Division III football, it was still all year round commitment. So I didn't have much experience either coming out of college, but I did focus on the things that I did have. Like I said, I was a comeback player of the year, so I tore my ACL and then played my senior year. So and I also I helped out with camps that were on campus. I showed around the recruits and their families. It was a great way to get a free meal, but yeah, I was always around. So I added that all on my resume. So any volunteer work, if you dealt camps, or if you were a tutor or a captain, any accolades that you can have. Again, that one page, you want to make sure you get the best bang for your buck. So by all means, include that stuff. So even if you didn't get paid for it, it was still something, and it's something to be proud of.
Is this something that you would highlight during the interview process? For example, a specific soft skill that you have as an athlete that you feel is a value for you. Would you try to drop this into the interview somehow and highlight that as an advantage?
Yeah, absolutely. It would be a great time when they ask you to tell me about yourself, you can definitely touch on your highlights and your playing career and what it's taught you and how you persevered, whether you had an injury or a setback. And yeah, I love folks that were former walk-ons that didn't get anything. I mean, Division III, I paid my way through college just because of the love of the game. So um, anytime you can show that, or that you earned a scholarship. Again, everybody's story is going to be a little bit different, so it depends if you're right out of school. If you're just graduating right now, then you want to focus on what you did in school. If you've been working for a few years, then you want to kind of highlight more of your education. Now, if you're making a transition from being an athlete into the real world, quote unquote, then obviously you want to highlight the skills that those transferable skills that you can bring over. So everybody loves a good underdog story, or somebody who just persevered and kept plugging away. So especially for sales positions, those are skills that employers are looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, most of the interviews are, I'm guessing, are all done through Zoom, and it's probably likely to stay for the future. Do you have any specific advice for student athletes on how to prepare for a Zoom interview, and how does it differ to an in-person interview?
Yeah, so there's pros and cons, obviously. You want to do your homework, make sure it's a quiet place and no distractions. Again, talk about the background, what's behind you. It's funny, like before we started talking, the landscapers are out. So you got to try to time those things, I guess. You can have your computer propped up a little bit, so make sure you're looking straight as opposed to down. Have all your notes in front of you, or taped to the wall, or taped to the side of your computer, so you can continue to look forward. Those are all good hints. And you take notes a couple of times, a little bit, but you want to make sure you're focusing as if the person's in the room with you. But most of the interviews, for at least a short time, it's going to be Zoom. But make sure you do that test run. Make sure everything's working ahead of time. Yeah, I'm sure, and still smile, engage, and those type of things. I mean, people hire people they like that show energy, enthusiasm. So you definitely want to be able to portray that through either Zoom or on a phone interview.
Yeah, and I think I really like one of the example that you gave regarding the phone interview, where you say, stand up because you will sound better and speak better if you're standing up. And this is something that can be applied to Zoom as well. Like if you propped up your desk and your computer well enough, you can also be sort of a little bit more free to move, and that can be perceived as quite dynamic as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, make sure the lighting's good too. So those are all things, and you can practice. I mean, like I said, practice with family, friends, or a job coach as well ahead of time, because the more you practice, the more you prepare, the more confident you're going to be, the better you're going to do.
Do you, when you're conducting interviews, is it typically just you by yourself with the interviewee, or there's a range of people from your company interviewing each of the applicants?
So it depends. Sometimes it'll be a panel interview. So we'll bring somebody in. So we might have other directors from out of town come in, and then we'll have it in a conference room. So if you're doing a panel interview, make sure you make eye contact. And when you're talking, you're just not talking to one person. You're making eye contact with everybody in the room, kind of going around. So this way you're engaged with everyone.
How do you apply that to Zoom?
Yeah, Zoom's tough. Yeah, just like a phone interview. But if panel interview face to face, you want to include everybody, definitely. So most of the interviews right now, since I'm all over the country, is by phone. So.
Is this something that you can ask the recruiter ahead of time? For example, if you receive a notification that you will be going on to a Zoom interview or a phone interview, can you contact them and ask them, who will you be speaking with? What is their position? So that you know what to expect and you can do your research?
Yeah, great question. So here's a little tip. So whoever interviewed you first, whether it's the recruiter or the headhunter, they're your best friend. So they have a valued interest in it as well, because they found you or you found them, whatever connection is, they have a job to do as well. So they're trying to fill that role. So that person should be your best friend. So any information, any tips you can get from them. Hey, can you tell me a little bit more about the hiring manager? What is he or she like? What can I be prepared for? Any tips you can give me? Absolutely, take advantage of that, because you'll get some valuable tidbits before that interview. Kind of know that person's style and what what's their pain points. What questions should I be prepared for? So yeah, that's a great question. Take advantage of that resource.
And how would you prepare differently between perhaps an interview the first interview that you're doing with the hiring manager or recruiter, and an interview that you're doing with your potential manager in your specific department? Is there any tips or anything that you can tell us between those two and how they would be run?
So typically the HR interview is going to be for personality fits and culture fits. So you're going to have more general questions with the HR. With the hiring manager, IT or sales or whatever, that's not their expertise. So you're going to get more questions based on, tell me about how you go about your sales presentation or prospecting clients or whatever. So for the operators, the direct managers, you're going to get more questions on really job specific questions. Whereas at HR, you're going to get more high level to make sure your personality and it's more of a culture fit. So, but don't take any interview for granted, even if it's your third interview. Don't think just because you're going to a third or fourth interview that the job is yours. Chick-fil-A has 5 or 6 interviews. It's a really thorough process. So treat each interview important, like it's a game day. So.
And that's a really good information to have. You're saying 5, 6 interviews, and you talked about the follow-up process once you've sent your resume. What would be the follow-up process in terms of timing in between each one of these interviews? And is it too much to reach out to inquire of how things are going and where you are in the race? How would you go about that?
So yeah, with Chick-fil-A, I mean, that's just one example of a company that does a lot of interviews. Most companies, it's probably going to be 2 or 3 interviews, and for the most part, they have time sensitive as well. Although a lot of jobs right now have been put on hold until this turns around. So right now it's probably tricky because they're probably still interviewing, but they probably might be saying, hey, we really like you. We want to make you an offer. However, we put the job on hold until, maybe the summer, end of the summer. So just, again, pleasantly persistent every couple of weeks, maybe check in. Hey, Joe, just wanted to see, I know it's been a couple of weeks. Any information, any feedback you gave me, I appreciate it. And just follow up that way. And you'll kind of gauge based on the person sometimes whether, they're starting to get aggravated with you or not. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touch base a little bit on the economy and what's going on right now. Can you tell us a little bit more of which industries or companies are more likely to hire and are really looking for employees right now, and which one are more on hold? Any insight for us?
Yeah. Well, thank goodness, Little Caesars, we've been doing pretty well. I mean, a little bit dip, but certain industries like pharmaceutical sales. I mean, Amazon, any distribution companies, logistics. Those are fields that are doing real well. Then you have the restaurant, hospitality business. Those are definitely suffering. So I guess nothing's truly recession proof. But whatever you can do to brush up your resume and develop your skills, and if you're in between jobs or still looking, you take a class online or do something productive, or go volunteer at a food bank or something like that. Any tools, I tell my kids, you got to put tools in your toolbox. Keep developing your skills, so you never know when you're going to need it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good link into how can you differentiate yourself right now from other people. Do you have specific recommendation on how to go about approaching your favorite company that you want to work for in several months, but it's not possible right now? Is there any recommendation on doing volunteer work or internship, or going a different way about connecting with a company, whether it's not through the traditional sort of recruiting route, but just maybe connecting with people that work at that company. Any alternative ways to go about it?
Yeah. So, I mean, everybody loves free labor, right? I mean, obviously, certain companies have restrictions on internships and those type of things. But LinkedIn is kind of almost like being a detective sometimes. So, you know, if you always dreamed of working Chick-fil-A or Coca-Cola or Little Caesars, start following them on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Start making connections with some of the people in the different departments. If you're interested in IT, try to find out who's the head of IT, reach out to that person, say, hey, you know, really love Little Caesars Pizza. You know, can you tell me, you know, some tips on how you got started, and start cultivating those relationships. And again, take advantage of those alumni associations, former players. And also on LinkedIn, you can, you know, Google or LinkedIn, you can search for your school, and it'll have everybody that's out there that went to your university or college, and you can start connecting with those people first. So I would start with there, and then you'll be surprised, you know, and it even breaks it down, you know, parts of the country and what fields and so on. So I would start with your university alumni relationships and then expand from there.
Great. That's a great tip. We had one question from the audience on what are the most difficult questions that you have asked or that people can expect to be asked during an interview?
Yeah, great
what
question.
would they be?
So, I mean, it's kind of an oldie, but I don't think there's much value in it, but you got to be prepared for it is, you know, what are your weaknesses? So that's usually a question everybody kind of dreads. And really when I'm coaching somebody is, you got to be prepared for it. But everybody has weaknesses, but you never want to say a weakness that is, if you're an accountant, you don't want to see your weaknesses. Well, I'm not really good with, I'm not a very analytical person. Obviously, that's not going to go too well for an accountant position. So you don't want to say I'm a workaholic either. I mean, that's kind of a answer people used to give, which is, you know, I don't want somebody to work 70, 80 hours a week. If you can't get it done in 40 or 50, then, you know, maybe there's a problem there. So what I would try to do is, one of the answers I use is, you know, maybe public speaking. So, and I kind of use what is called like the sandwich technique. So start with the positive. So I really enjoy giving webinars, talking, doing seminars, teaching classes. However, early in my career, I was nervous. I wasn't really well prepared. I made a lot of mistakes. Since that time, I joined Toastmasters International. I've taken all the speaking classes, and anytime I have an opportunity to speak in front of a large audience, I raise my hand, and I'm constantly polishing and working on my communication, especially speaking in front of large audiences. So that's kind of a safe one that, you know, maybe it can help. You get the other questions like Google and sometimes of the big companies, you know, how many gumballs fit in a jetliner, which I guess there is an answer, but they really just want to see your thought process. Okay, let me see the square footage and this and that. So if you're applying for one of those positions, they just really want to see how it's not really if you have the right answer, they just want to see how you think and what your thought process is. So.
And I think those questions definitely come back for any of the consulting firms and strategic.
A lot of times they just want a reaction too. They see if they can get you nervous or upset, and, you know, so as long as you can say, okay, well, this, you know, take this square footage and this and that, okay. So, yeah.
Do you have any advice for those that are perhaps a bit more shy or uncomfortable in getting into a video call? You know, how to start the interview? Are they expected to have small talk or have icebreaker, or does it come from the recruiter to do that? What's a good way to get started so that they can feel a little bit more comfortable as it goes through?
So let the hiring manager lead the conversation, and it's kind of like dance, and you just kind of follow along. Some people are strong, deep personalities, and they just want to go right to the chase. You know, boom, boom, boom. Mm-hmm. Other people, you know, typically HR, small talk. You know, how was your commute? Or how was the weather? So I would just gauge by who's interviewing and just follow their lead. I've gotten interviews before where all we did was talk about football. So, if you go into somebody's office and you can pick up something, whether it's, pictures of their kids or, sports teams or whatever, try to make those connections. Oh, I see you went to LSU. My wife went to LSU. So try to make those connections, and that usually makes the conversation, everybody kind of a little bit at ease. Believe it or not, a lot of hiring managers are nervous too. And unfortunately, a lot of them don't do a very good job, and sometimes don't ask the right questions. So they're just as nervous a lot of times as you are. And really, they have a position they want to fill, and they're hoping that you're the candidate. So whenever you get called for an interview, feel good about yourself, because you did make it to that point. So.
That's really interesting to hear, and I think good for student athletes and everybody out there to understand that they're not the only one to be nervous about the conversation. And do you have, especially for those that are coming out of college and perhaps have not been in a lot of interviews, do you have some recommendation on the tone of the conversation or the type of language that you can use? And I know that seems like a sort of a silly question, but I think a lot of, especially athletes, come a very straightforward, direct type of language. And so I'm just curious, if you have recommendation specifically for the athletes on how that tone should be during the interview.
You want to try to, avoid words like, I mean, I'm an old white guy. So stay away from, speak proper English, I guess, is your best advice there, and practice with an adult. So, if this is your first, as I say, if this is your first interview, practice with an adult, or take advantage of some of the resources from maybe your alumni associations or career counseling services, and get that extra practice. And like we said earlier, the practice, the preparation, it's just going to make you feel more confident and just boost your self-esteem, and it's gonna set you apart. So yeah.
You had mentioned to me, talking about setting apart, you had mentioned to me before the power of the handwritten note to send to the recruiter after an interview. I've got a question too on in this age of everything digital, is there any value in sending your cover letter or your resume by mail, or sending a note after a first interview or second interview? How do you see that?
Well, this day and age, I guess it's a little tough. So 6 months ago, I would say absolutely. If you have an address and somebody, I mean, when I first started, secretaries would screen, resumes and letters and that type of thing. Now CEOs, vice presidents, they don't get mail anymore in the mail. So 6 months ago, I would say, yeah, if it's a company, I always wanted to work for the NFL or whatever company, look up the director, head of HR or marketing or finance, and send that handwritten, not handwritten, but send that personalized cover letter and resume by UPS or FedEx, so it gets to their desk. I guarantee you they'll look at it, because people just don't get mail anymore. Currently, since a lot of folks aren't working from their offices, then a customized email would be your best research. And you can kind of, once you make a connection with somebody at a company, typically the emails are kind of the same. So once you find out one person, and even if you can't get the head of HR or sales marketing's email, you might come close, and it's worth a shot to fire away and say, I've been following you for a long time. I really admire your company, admire what you do. I recently graduated from Penn State University. I was a swimmer, 4-year varsity letterman. I have a strong work ethic, and I have a passion for sales. I'd love an opportunity to speak with you more on how I can be an asset to your team.
That's great. And with your company, All Pro Interviews, you help athletes prepare, and you advise them with their interview skills and the whole process. Can you tell us a little bit more about what services you offer and typically who you've been working with through that process?
Sure, sure. So yeah, I love working with athletes. Again, being a former athlete myself, and my kids are big swimmers. So whether it's high school kids, helping them with their interviews, with college coaches, because believe it or not, yeah, it's the same process when you're meeting with college coaches and scholarships are on the line. The person, you could be pretty close in skill level, but it's the person that sells themselves and presents themselves the best is going to get the scholarship. So I work with high school kids. I work with college kids coming right out. I've done some work with NFL prospects getting ready for the NFL interviews with executives. I've done a lot of work with Chick-fil-A for that whole process. So I've helped pretty much everybody. So the big thing, what we do is usually start off with the tell me about yourself question, the basics, and build on that. And then I can do Zoom or FaceTime or phone interviews. And it all depends, whatever. I try to tailor the training and coaching based on whatever the client needs at that time. So yeah, it's exciting. It's rewarding, especially when somebody calls me back and say, hey, Butch, I appreciate those tips. I was ready for those questions, and I aced it and I got that job offer.
So basically everything that you presented to us, you go through that process with them and help them practice and get better at every step, from the cover letter, the resume to the interview, right?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
whatever you knew I need, I'll do it.
Yeah, and so I think we're getting to the end of our webinar today, but I will be sharing with all our participants more information about you, Butch, and your company, as well as you've shared with us some worksheet and summaries of what to do for the interview, the three-step hiring process. So I'll be sharing that with all our participants. Is there anything that we missed or forgot, or any last tip or advice that you can give to everybody today?
Yeah, just don't give up. The work ethic and the grind that you put in as an athlete, don't lose that. Like I say, even though the economy might be bad and companies might be laying off, and some companies might not be hiring, there are companies that are hiring, and they're looking for that skill set that former athletes bring. So keep plugging away, and eventually you'll get that job, that opportunity. So good luck, and God bless.
Thanks, Butch. That's great advice. And I think, being persistent, using those skills as athletes to continue to push forward, and also perhaps being very open to what's available out there. If you haven't decided which industry you wanted to get into, maybe like following those that are most attractive right now, or having an unconventional way to come back later on, maybe into an industry that you wanted to be in. I think, just for everybody being flexible and open to anything that's available in terms of opportunity right now. This will be a good advice.
Absolutely.
Butch, I thank you so much for sharing some of your time with us today. We'll be following up with our participant and sharing more about you and in all the worksheet and information that you have given us. So much appreciated. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and make sure you check out some of the other events we have available for the rest of the week and the rest of the month. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.